Well, hey, Unstuck listeners, before you skip forward to today's conversation, I want to make sure that you're considering Planning Center for your church. I use Planning Center in my churches to schedule volunteers, create service plans, and share really key information. But Planning Center does so much more. It's really an all-in-one church management software where you can easily do things like track first-time guests, facilitate event signups, and utilize an excellent check-in system. They also have a great online giving solution. Best of all, you can start using Planning Center for free. Visit planningcenter.com to get started. Well, welcome to the Unstuck Church podcast. I'm Sean, your host, here with my teammate, Amy Anderson. Amy, last week we started a new series on communication, and here's why. We're getting into that busy back to school and ministry kind of ramp up season. And if you have communication issues as a ministry, they're going to start showing up big time this time of year. And we identified 3 areas that we believe churches could take it up a notch and be really best in class organizations when it comes to how they communicate with both insiders and outsiders, and then also with their staff. So last week we talked about internal or team communication. Amy, do you want to introduce this week's topic for us?
Well, this week we're going to be talking about your communication with your congregation, with your insiders. And by the way, we've got a great interview to share as part of this conversation.
Yeah, you actually caught up with Blue Van Dyke at Studio C, and he has such a strong conviction around the need for churches to get better at communicating with insiders, and especially at large churches where we've seen this go very wrong.
Yeah, and it's really practical ideas about how it can get better.
Yeah, so let's start today's episode with that conversation with Blue, and then we'll wrap up with a few other practical ideas of our own. So here's Amy's conversation with Blue Van Dyke.
Well, Blue, to kick off this conversation, can you just share a little bit about why you're so passionate about helping church leaders communicate better with people in their congregations? Like, why does this matter so much?
I love the question, actually, because I wasn't always sure that I even knew where that intersection was at that point. I mean, I grew up professionally or classically really in the marketing space, and out of grad school, I was fortunate to get into a tier 1 automotive company in the marketing side of it. And I jumped ship and I actually ran an agency for a while, got into it. But I always thought there was sort of like, that's what you do in the marketplace. And then there's church, right? And then I joined a church and I came on board as an executive pastor. And I saw that there was this demand for all those things I learned over there, right? Had an application for it here. And for me personally, it really is the blending of this background that I didn't orchestrate. I really do feel like, God reveals himself to me sometimes in his strategy. And I wasn't smart enough to come up with a strategy that said you should go learn engagement over here with Mercedes, or you should learn personalization with the agency, or you should learn that. And then at some point, what I kind of felt like him say was, hey, I'm going to ask you, you practiced all that stuff on things that don't matter, like luxury cars and cigarettes or whatever. So now I want you to take that same skill set and just bring it to the things that do matter in my house. So personally, I'm incredibly grateful that I found a union where I can serve the kingdom with the tool belt that God gave me on a personal level. But you know what? I think, Amy, I'm passionate about it because it matters, if that makes sense, right? I think people are incredibly desperate to feel known right now more than ever. We're in a digitally saturated world. And I think they want to belong to something. They want to grow. They want authentic, spiritually deep, meaningful community. And I think the church is incredibly well positioned to provide that to them right now. Right. I always say that at the end of the day, what we really want to do is we want to make sure that our members feel, or church members feel, known and cared for, because they are known and cared for, if that makes sense. We just don't always show that or demonstrate it. Churches, I haven't met a pastor yet who says, I don't even care about my members, or, I just think we sometimes sound like we don't because of the way that we message people.
Yeah.
I often say it's unique because I'm a marketing guy. I always look at everything on a life cycle. Right? We can call that in church a spiritual journey or an engagement pathway or whatever we want. In the marketing world, it's a life cycle. Okay, we want to take somebody from not yet Christian to fully committed follower. And the problem is everybody is starting someplace different, and they're going at their own speed. So I always say everybody's at a different place and runs at a different pace. And the problem is sometimes we communicate to everybody as if we're at the same place and going at the same speed.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, in our experience working with churches, it seems like the majority of them approach communication with insiders like this. Everybody, everywhere, all the time. Isn't there a movie called that?
I think you're
Everybody,
right.
everywhere, all the time. That's the
Totally.
insider,
Yeah.
communication strategy. Tiffany from our team, when she worked in a PR firm, she said they called this a lack of strategy approach, and they called it spray and pray.
100%.
So when you must be seeing that too. Why do you think we do that? Why is it everybody everywhere all the time?
You know what's funny about it? It's great. I love it. I'm going to steal, Tiffany, spray and pray. We call it shotgun messaging or shotgun marketing. The idea was we're just going to blast a message out to everybody. And what's funny, it's not even that I'm taking the same message to everybody. I often say I'm going to blast it to everybody on every single channel I have in my means.
Right.
So I'm going to send the same message on an email, a text, a dashboard, you name it, across the board, and hope it just lands on somebody. I think there's a couple reasons. One, I think, honestly, they just don't know any better. And I don't mean that in any way, but nobody teaches engagement marketing in Bible colleges these days. I hope they do. I hope they change that at some point or another. So I don't think it's a lack of desire. I think it's a lack of understanding.
Sure.
I do think it's incredibly important because I try to tell people that, a wrong message is not neutral. It's counterproductive. It's an important component of what we need to do. So when you have this shotgun messaging going out with, they blast this, it actually says and communicates, I don't know about you and I don't really care about you. And sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes that's funny. So just on a tangent, there's a little example. We were with a church that we were working with, and one of the pastors got a message about a breastfeeding class, right? And he was like, "What? Right? What am I doing exactly?" So everybody giggled in the room, and we all laughed about it. We're like, "Okay, it can be kind of funny sometimes." And then I had one where I was doing a podcast similar to this, and somebody put in the show notes that just the night before the church had done the funeral for her husband. And inadvertently, the next day, she got a message that says, this is going to be the best year of your life, right? As a general shotgun message. And she said that one stung. She understood it, but it stung. Yeah. So I think, obviously, the shotgun is incredibly important. I don't think they do it because they don't care. They do it because they don't know. And then I think sometimes they do it because they just have the wrong structure. And what I mean by that is, even in sort of my venture capital days, you could put organizations in sort of a simple structure in my mind. You have sort of executive leadership that sets vision and direction and values and where you're going. Then I have a whole bunch of people in what I call a support layer, support service like HR, finance, IT. And in the middle, it's what's called kind of the 3 Ps of marketing. You have somebody that builds the product, somebody that, is responsible for the placement of the product, and somebody that's responsible for promoting the product. So, the product, the placement, and the promotions. I think what happens is they often look at the placement or the communication as down in that support layer. They treat their comms teams kind of like a Kinko's. Hey, can you just build me a banner? Can you do something? And what I try to say is there's an entire strategy that people like me have gone to school with for a long time to learn how to get the right message to the right person on the right channel. And I think what happens is we don't realize it's important to bring that to the table along with those who are doing weekend planning of the experience, who are looking at your campuses and your distribution. So I think it's a combination of not knowing, and it's a combination of just having the wrong structure to pull it off.
Great examples. Well, Blue, could you maybe share a framework for a better way to approach this to make it simpler?
Yeah, thank you for offering that. I think definitively we have to figure out as a church how to deliver a personalized experience even at scale, right? If you look at the world today, Amazon has billions of customers, and yet somehow they know exactly what product I purchased, what I'm inclined to buy in the future. They send me nice little reminders. I've got Netflix that can kind of give me ideas about what I may like and wish lists. And so in this age where there is a digital strategy, I think that we have to start communicating with our members in a personal, engaging, relevant way with messages. So we, one of the things that we did is we created this member engagement solution, this messaging platform that really is designed to help people through their discipleship pathway. So I think it looks a little bit like this. First, you have to define what your pathway is. Where do we want to take people? What's that look like? Then I need to know where people are in that uniquely. So I need to be able to know exactly kind of where their starting point is. I need to be able to match them intelligently to something that makes sense for them next. And then I need a way to tell them how to do that, when to go right, when to go left, and measure it. I kind of like to say it like this. I think our job a little bit as a church is like a big giant GPS. Right? And I like to say that we brought sort of the tool, the GPS tool. It's relatively complicated behind the scenes. I have no idea how my little maps GPS knows where I'm at right now. I don't know the triangulation. I don't know how that works, but I just know it's easy. Right. So what I always say is that if, like any good GPS, you got to know where you're headed. That's your engagement pathway. right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I got to know where I'm currently starting. That's data
Yep.
that we pull in to
Yep.
do it. And then I need a way to tell you when to go right or left. And that's the messaging platform. And so that's what I would think about as I'm a church, is think of us as a GPS helping people through their engagement pathway. And I need to use these different components of it to help guide them.
Well, that sounds kind of simple. I like
Yeah, isn't
that.
that great? It's easy for you to just say it like this.
That's right.
Pull it up's a little different. So it's
Uh,
great.
well, the church leaders that I talk to, they're smart and they
Yep.
know the way that they're communicating with insiders. They know it really isn't working like they want it to most of the time.
Yep.
But even as you're talking about GPS and all these things, sometimes just keeping up with the technology can feel incredibly overwhelming. So, where would you recommend they start? Like, what roles do they need to invest in? And what tech solutions do they need to invest in?
Love it. I would say this first, more than the tech, is you have to get alignment on the methodology, right? And you have to keep that simple. So I try to tell people it makes no sense buying a piece of technology if you're not sure what problem it's solving for you, right? 'Cause then you just have tech sitting around out there and you get all this stuff, that makes no sense or doesn't tie in. So the first place I say is really, do you believe in the methodology? And I try to oversimplify that. We want to grow the kingdom. We believe we'll grow the kingdom by engaging people. We think we'll engage people by delivering personalized messages, right?
Mhm.
So that's this idea of, I say, grow through engagement through personalization. If you don't have alignment on that, don't even worry about the tech just yet, right?
Mhm.
So keep it simple, dive that in. And then I think when it does look at, some of the different roles, I think one of the things that people need to bring to that table, as I mentioned, is a marketing and communication specialist.
Mm.
Often I see churches say, hey, I'll just grab my creative person and I'll put them in and they can do all of
Mhm.
my messaging. Now, creative, I love it. You have to have that, but it goes way deeper than just what is the copy and what is the image I'm going to use.
Mhm.
It really is, when am I going to send it? What channel am I going to use? What frequency? Who's doing it? So I always say, look for a marketing specialist as a role to bring to the table. And then I would centralize that marketing communication so you make sure that you kind of, have a strategy of who you're communicating
Sure.
to. But as far as tech, to your original question, looking at tech, I think there's a couple foundations. You need a good church management system. At the end of the
Mhm.
day, a church management system in my world is like a CRM tool out in the
Mhm.
marketplace. I just need to know some way I can store some data about people so that I can use that. And then what I'd say is, once you have that information that's sitting there and it's not on a piece of paper in Bob's desk drawer, right? There's
Right.
some sort of
Right.
access to get to that. Then that's where you kind of look at some of the stuff where we're saying, hey, you need somehow like a warehouse to use that data, and a communications tool that can use that data to sort and build segmented audiences and custom messages. And then I'd say the third piece is you need some place to send that message. So I call that my distribution channels. That's a website, it's a mobile
Mhm.
app, it's email,
Mhm.
it's SMS, right? So where's the data? How do I curate the data so I know something to do with it? And then where do I send the message off to? And I would say those are the core components of
Mhm.
technology I'd focus on first.
I was laughing when you said church management software because, see if you agree with this. I was talking to one pastor and he said, "Here's my thoughts on church management systems. Pick one and then everyone can hate it."
Yeah, it's so true. It is so in my world. I love it because I have some that's on one. There's from A switching to B, B switching to C, C back to A, and they always say,
Yes.
"Which one? What are you seeing?" And I'm saying, "I see you all changing to each other's own systems." Right? It
Yes.
absolutely is the truth. But I
Isn't
think
that
the
funny?
reason, it's funny, Amy. The reason I think they do that is because somebody, bought that church management system and
Mhm.
expected it to do everything. And
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of that. I believe there's these multi-point things. Messaging platforms that are really good at messaging. You have data platforms that are good at storing data. You have, business intelligence tools. I think the key is make sure you get one that talks well with others,
That's
right?
right.
Who knows what's going to happen 10 years from now? There's going to be some
Mhm.
hologram thing I'm supposed to incorporate. I just need it to talk. And so, right.
Good
But that's
Lord.
funny.
Well, hey,
Yeah.
can you share some of what Studio C is seeing work best for churches when it comes to communication with insiders, in the realms of texting,
Yeah.
email, and apps?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, the first thing I'd say is, don't think of it as sending out messages to your insiders. Think of it as creating communication journeys with your insiders, right? So I
I
call them
like that.
campaigns. And the
Mhm.
idea, another term of this is an omni-channel system versus the multi-channel. Multi-channel is, I got multiple channels, email, SMS, text messaging, and I can send them out. Omni says, I'm going to use those channels appropriately in part of the journey, right? So an
Mhm.
email lends itself to long form. Please don't ever
Mhm.
send me a big old thing in text message though. I'll
No.
never read it. Right. So
Mhm.
what I say is the first thing we got to do is think about going through and building these journeys. We may invite somebody to join in a group on their mobile app. If they click yes, I can trigger an email that says, awesome on your decision. Here's what to expect. And then I can send them a text message the night before reminding them to show up. right? So
Sure.
this whole journey we sent through last year, as we were looking at this, so we look at things over a rolling 12 months. So in the last 12 months, we've had about 4.6 million new things done, new steps taken, right? Somebody that
Wow.
wasn't in a
Yep.
group, somebody that wasn't serving. But what I try to tell people is that took us 14 million messages to get those 4 million steps, right?
Wow.
So it's not just, hey, Amy, get in group. And you say like, okay, right? I've
Right.
got to tell you 4 times in 4 different ways at the appropriate time. So long and short, think of these journeys and think about using the right tools at the right time.
My friend Kim Meyer used to say
Yeah.
that when it came to like social media, she said you have to understand the job description of each of these forms of social media. And in a sense, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's a job description for email, for texting, for web messages, things like that, correct?
I love it. Exactly right. Some of them were never designed to do some of the other
Mm-hmm.
things, if that makes sense, right? So
Yeah.
a dashboard gives me lots of messages about where I currently am. An email allows me to give a little bit more color or detail
Mm-hmm.
associated with you. Right. There is a specific job that they were designed to play. The problem is we think they all play all jobs, right? So often
Everything, everybody, all the
there
time.
it is. There's your shotgun again that sends out. So absolutely, I'd say be specific. And then also there's another thing that we always do. There's some tools like you can look at, we do event level communications, meaning not every event needs the same level of messaging,
No,
right?
thank
Your
you.
A
Thank
level
you.
events, we may go out 120 days for an A level. We'll do a whole 120-day campaign. There's some D level events where you're going to get a quick text message reminding you it exists. We're going to kind of move on. Right. So I
That's
think
right.
having a strategy and understanding of how to deploy it and then the mix of tools that you're going to use is a huge part of that.
And this is where your marketing communication specialist comes in. They think through those things for you.
100%. And then often what we said is, hey, your Marcom person is kind of like an agency and their client are the ministries and the campuses. So if
Yep.
they can come in, they can understand what is it you're trying to accomplish, when, and then they can put together sort of a Marcom strategy.
Yep.
And then they also understand the use of tools, right? So our strategists, for instance, at our church, they went out and found that prospects, people who were considering going to your church, were going to somewhere between 12 and 15 different church websites before they'd ever show up, right? And so when we ask them, okay, you're going to 12 different church websites and you're considering this church, what are you looking for? And by far, one of the biggest comments was, I'm looking to see if this church is weird or not, right?
Uh-huh.
What they're doing.
Yep.
And so what we found, though, is that when churches were using their website for their insider communication, sometimes that insider communication looked a little weird.
Weird.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. One guy, I love this personally, but one church was doing like 21 days of fasting and prayer. Okay.
Mhm.
They had it splashed all over the website. One of our prospects in our focus groups looked at it, passed right on to the next website.
Yep.
And so I asked him, like, why? And he's like, man, if I go there, I don't get to eat food for 3 weeks. So, it can, what I try to say is use the right tool. So we're huge fans of your website for your prospects, your mobile app for your members. It allows you to, tailor that, but that's where that role can come in as well and say, hey guys,
Yep.
here's how we're going to use these different channels.
Yep. That's great. Well, Blue, it's always so good to connect with you. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Oh, first of all, it's great talking to you. I feel like, I should be on the other side. I get good intel from you all the time that help us build these things. I just get to layer on top of smart things people are doing with some technology. I really would. This is a Blue thing for sure, but I believe technology is and should be submissive to the methodology or the strategy. Technology is not the thing. We're the supporting actor. So if there's not clarity around the thing and what you're doing, I think churches or anybody for that matter will waste a lot of money on technology. So I'd say start with the methodology, then find the technology that works for you. The other thing is I see a lot of churches really going through this debate of, hey, should I buy or should I build? Right. And what I don't know if they always understand is the cost of building something doesn't stop at the end of building that thing. Right. There are maintenance. So roughly, I try to tell people, plan on whatever you spent to build it, spend about 20% of that annually to maintain it. Right. And then on top of that, just know that whoever built it, you need that skill set ongoing. So if they're going to leave, you're going to be in a hard spot or a bind finding people. So I'm a huge fan to say, I think companies should be good at what they're good at. Churches should be good at what churches are good at, and let tech companies be good at what they're at, and just make sure that they've got a heart for the kingdom and what we're trying to do. Bring those together. And I think the last one, I get this question all the time, and I think it's really starting to shift is, you asked me early on, like, what's one of the issues why this is happening? I think there was a mindset that using data was a sin, right? That somehow using data to communicate with people was a form of manipulation. And I think if I would is to shift that mindset, to say it's not a form of manipulation. It's what I want for you, not from you, but it's my way to try to shepherd somebody personally and relevantly. So if I could, in a final thought, this has nothing to do with technology, understand that using these tools or this data is in support of your members and shepherding them well. It's not trying to manipulate them into something that's not good for them. So I would just call it data's not a sin. Let's go ahead and use that and technology and serve people better.
Well, Amy, that really was a great conversation. I really enjoy listening to Blue. He always has great insights, and I always walk away from conversations learning from him. Let's recap just a bit. When it comes to internal communication, what were the highlights for you?
Well, of course, I love that he highlighted that data is not a sin. I work with many churches that when we start setting specific goals and targets, some of them just start to bristle. It's honestly usually not like the lead pastor, executive pastor, but these churches haven't had a culture where they actually talk about what success looks like. And it feels anti-spiritual if we, use numbers or goals. And so, numbers and goals, of course, are not communicating. It should not be communicating that it's about the numbers. It's about people because, of course, people are numbers. So I love that he just called that out. And then second, I love when Blue said, kind of related to strategic planning, that somehow using data to communicate with people is like a form of manipulation. I think that's another fear, right? No, it's about getting personal with where people are in their journey so that we can serve them better. Yeah. Sean, our friend Tony Morgan, he used to get so frustrated when he would get an email from his church to get into a small group. He was in a group. Not only that, but he was a small group leader. And if the church used their data, they would be sending him an entirely different message rather than someone who's never even taken that step yet. So that's right. I just think that relates to Blue's point that as a church, we want people to feel known and cared for because they are known and they are cared for. And I think when we demonstrate that we're aware of where they're at in the journey, it actually helps us help them take their next steps.
Yeah.
Another insight, I think I said it was just this everybody, everywhere, all the time approach. Like Blue said, it's counterproductive. It actually communicates the opposite. It communicates that we don't know you. So I think as churches and as leaders trying to communicate with our insiders, we have to remember that everybody is starting someplace different in the journey, and they move at their own speed. Yeah. So when we communicate to everybody as if they're all in the same place, I just think we miss the mark. And instead of connecting people through our communications, we're actually saying, I don't know you, which can translate to, I also don't really care about you. Right. So the modern strategy for communicating with your insiders, for our listeners, it really starts with learning how to deliver a personalized experience. And again, even when you're a large church, it's probably even more important then. And I agree with Blue that there's a new role that most of us need to make room for on our teams, and it's a marketing communications specialist. We need someone who understands and knows this world of communicating with people in 2025, really and beyond. Yeah. We need someone with that expertise, and of course, they need to love Jesus. And those people are out there. The world around us has marketing specialists everywhere. Just check my in-basket, check my text messages, check my apps. So this is a new role we need to be looking for.
That's good. All right. Well, let's get really practical then with some next steps for churches. Where should they start if they need to get better in this area?
Yeah, I think an easy place to start is just as he challenged, let's start giving some thought to the job descriptions of our different communication channels. Like which ones are for insiders only, which ones are for outsiders, and where does it include a mix? I think we have to understand that. And I think it even gives then who's ever overseeing communications just real clarity. This is how we're going to voice. So just for example, as we talk about the website, I'm on the same page with Blue. I know you are too, that the website is primarily should be voiced for outsiders. Insiders will use it too, but we want to be voicing this and designing this for the people who are coming to check out the church and see what it's like. And we've highlighted this before, and we'll probably shut down their website again. But Prairie Lakes Church, Jesse Tink is the lead pastor there. They have an outstanding website that's voiced towards the outsider. And you can go to that at prairielakeschurch.org and take a look at it.
Yes, I love their landing page, Amy. Just the first page that you land on, for me as someone who doesn't know their church, it answers every question that I have. Yep. And I know the insiders can go a little bit deeper into the website to find the things they're looking for. But for me as a brand new person, it answers every question. I absolutely love it. That's a great example.
Yeah, and if the website is really that primary space for outsiders, I would say your church app is the primary space for insiders. That's what I see most churches doing. So let's name that, because we're going to design how we're communicating in that app for the insider voicing that we want to do. And then, of course, when it comes to things like public social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all of those are probably a mix. But again, because they are public, I think you want to lean towards a primary focus being for the outsider. There's going to be exceptions, but I think we want to have that thought. And then, of course, email is going to be a mix. But even there, I think you should still have the conversation, talk about the job description when we're emailing to outsiders versus when we're emailing, to insiders. Yep. We need to have different lists for that. And we need to kind of look at that more long form channel and make sure we're voicing it correctly.
And Amy, I'll let my geriatric millennial come out a little bit, but I absolutely love email. I love a good insider email newsletter where I can just distill a lot of information really quickly. Yeah. So that's my confession.
Yeah. Very good. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Moving away from that job description, the second next step that I think any church can take is think about preaching your announcements once in a while. Meaning, one way to dramatically improve your communication with insiders is to weave your key, I'll do air quote, announcements into your actual preaching. In other words, instead of always relying on some 2-minute announcement or whatnot, our other channel to get the word out, man, we got to preach that once in a while, because often what we're announcing are big next steps, small next steps that we want people to take. And by the way, when you do have just announcements, please try not to let who's ever carrying those get into the weeds, because people just tune out. This, Sean, I've shared this, and I love this church. But when I was working with them on kind of how they're approaching the weekend, 25% of their service was announcements. They were in different spaces throughout that time together, but when you added up all the minutes, 25% was announcements. I'm just telling you, it's not effective. Yeah. My last thought on this, Sean, and this is the bigger step, and this is what I think actually starts to get overwhelming, especially for us Gen Xers who are in leadership, because technology keeps changing at the speed of light. Yeah. But you do need to have someone who's native to this, your geriatric millennial. Have them start exploring your technology options. You need to have a technology that'll match the strategy that you want to be able to engage people with. And there are lots of tools out there, but you need ones that will serve your ministry objectives. And again, we're big fans of Blue and Studio C. If you want to learn more about them, you can just find them online at thestudioc.org. Sean, I don't know if you're hearing this, but the few churches that I've been talking to that have started working with them recently just cannot say enough good things about their service.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very impressive, some of the things that they're able to do on the technology side to help a big church feel small.
That's right.
And I say big church, big church can be relative to what the person who steps inside your church for the first time feels. So even if you may not think about yourself as a big church, you probably feel larger to that person who's brand new to your church. And Studio C can help a big church feel small. Yeah. This has been really good. I appreciate all of the practical thoughts that you've been able to share today, Amy, too. I think that's really helpful. Anything that you want to leave listeners with as we wrap up today's conversation?
Yeah. Blue made the comment that many churches that they engage with when they start to bring a technology solution, many of them have never really thought through their own ministry methodology. Like defining the next steps they want people to take. And actually, that's where the relationship began with us in Studio C. They're like, we have the technology. We aren't strategic planning people. Right. We aren't people who have that kind of gifting. So Blue was experiencing so many churches who wanted their technology solution, but hadn't done the work of figuring out the next steps they want people to take. And so I'll just close with this. If you haven't done that work yet, that's actually your next step. You need to get clarity around what journey you want people to be on and what that pathway is. And of course, that's what we help churches do. And so we'd love to help you if you need to get that defined.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Unstuck Church podcast. Don't forget, you can find our show notes and additional resources to go with today's conversation at theunstuckgroup.com/podcast. You can subscribe via email so that you never miss an episode. This is one of my many emails that I get in my inbox that I like, Amy, to have access to the full resource archive of all of our past episodes as well. And we'll be back next week to wrap up our series on the 3 communication challenges for churches, talking about better communication with outsiders, and an interview featuring Phil Taylor of Plain Joe Studio. So you won't want to miss that. We'll see you back here next week.